We were talking today about innovating for sustainable development, about new model, the need for a new model for understanding innovation. This session is organized by the Sustainability Transitions Research Network, so the research network, and we have some thoughts about how this type of innovation and this model can be organized. And in this session, we would like to talk about these insights, how they have been used in developing country contexts, and whether we can also make use of them in the African context. So can we mobilize this type of insights for the purpose of discussing innovation for sustainability here? So my name is Wieczorek. I'm with the Sustainability Transitions pretty long. All my work was devoted to translating the transition theories and concepts to developing country contexts. And I would like to share a couple of insights with you. My co-chair is Bruno Turnheim. Bruno is supporting us. And I have a couple of panelists, but I will introduce them later. So the plan for today, we have about 90 minutes. We'll see how the discussion goes. We can spend 90 minutes, but we don't have to. So we can be very productive. First, I wanted to make some basic points about what sustainability transitions really is. What do we mean by sustainability transitions, so that we can have common language and that we can discuss together. And then I would like to share 5 observations, my own observations, about when you transfer this thinking to developing countries, what is it that you see? I will play devil's advocate a little bit, because I am a sustainability transition researcher, but I want to stimulate the discussion, so I will be a bit provocative. And then I will explain exactly how this session will look like. So in terms of sustainability transitions, I think I will start with innovation, the concept of innovation. So we talk about innovating for sustainability. This agenda has been very much driven by the Western European context, especially after the Second World War, and how we have been perceiving the environmental problems, how we have been dealing with them. And the first approach was very reactive. We were putting filters on the chimneys, very reactive mode. Specialists were involved. Then we thought maybe we can be a little bit more clever about that, started to think about closing loops in the system, recycling. This is the time of circular economy, but in the industrial ecology type of ideas. Then in the 70s, we thought maybe we can earn money on the green products. And then, of course, different types of specialists actors were needed, more sector managers. But we observed that given the new challenges, new societal challenges, this type of product and process innovation is not enough. So the argument goes that we need system innovation. And that means that the whole society needs to be involved, and the society needs a vision, needs to know where they want to go. So when we talk about system is a very popular word. We have spent some time defining what we mean by system. And again, we have a very Western and European type of view of the systems. We look not only at technical elements. If you think about, for example, a system of mobility. So we define systems as configurations of societal and technical aspects that help fulfill certain needs of society. And when we talk about mobility system, it's not only the car, but the whole production network, maintenance network, infrastructure that makes it possible to use the car. Law. Imagine road without signs, without regulations. The whole price system, it's very easy to buy a car. If you don't have money, you can very quickly arrange a loan. So the price system is very well in place, it's very well organized, and also our practices. So we really like driving. We are used to it. We are sort of locked in. And this system of social and technical elements is very stable, at least in our Western view and our Western perspective is locked in. All the actors that are participating, they have their interests in it. They are not interested in any changes in this system. If there is any change, it's rather incremental. So there is a lot of car innovations. You can think of safety innovation for safety. Cars are more safer, but it's still a car. We are still driving a car. Now, most of these systems, you can think about energy system, you can think about the water system, a system through which education is provided, shelter, and so on. Most of these systems are terribly unsustainable. So we say these systems have to change if we want to move to a more sustainable society. And that implies not only new products, but the whole change and transformation of the regulations, policies, practices. So this is what we mean by system change, what we mean by transition. And sustainability provides a sort of normative orientation. Now, these systems won't change unless there are some incentives. And these incentives may come from very broad types of factors such as weather events, extreme weather events, urbanization, demographic changes, climate change debate. Also our ideas about what's modern may either stabilize, or we also have crises, wars. They may either stabilize the status quo or they may put pressure on the systems and cause that these systems disentangle. But if the system disentangles, then we need to have an alternative. And alternatives, you can think for mobility, the first thing that comes to mind is the electric car, right? We replace the fuel. We think that if we electrify our car, and there's a lot of discussion in the Netherlands now, we go electric, because then it will be easier to control the energy production, and we solve the problem. But do we really? Now, this is what our students in Eindhoven do. This is a solar car. They participate in the Solar Challenge. There is a lot of discussion about smart mobility right now. People also believe that if we improve the traffic flows on the streets, that this will also solve the problem. Peace and Right, I don't know if you know it. It's I don't know where this. It's simply a new place allocated for in front of stations mainly for just quick disembarking of a person who is traveling, taking the luggage, and you just go away. So a husband brings wife or the other way around. And it's a dedicated place, and it really makes a much better use of space. And it does not create any congestion in the city center. Now, a bus rapid transit, you probably know, it's very popular, where the buses are having a dedicated lane. That means a lot of infrastructure use, use of ICT type of technologies, because the bus has to communicate with the infrastructure, so that the road is being closed and the bus can go on, that the lights are working. Now, train in the Netherlands, train is probably part of the incumbency. We also have a very nice system of bikes that you can rent when you have a ticket for a train trip. So you can rent a bike and continue your trip. And other. So we know, we study these changes because the past changes, because we believe that if we understand how this change happened in the past, then we can inform the future. And that's a very stylized example that we use in our studies as an example of such a system change, where not only the product change, but the whole set of infrastructure around it, policies, practices, and so on. So in terms of using this type of thinking in developing countries, I think you can already anticipate a number of problems. Now, the first is that we define these systems, we call them sometimes regime because they are so stable and so locked in, as very uniform. Sometimes just one type of technology is defined, very homogeneous. But when I go to Asia, that's where most of my empirical research is, now then you can see that there is a much bigger diversity. And so these systems are uncomparable to what we see in Europe or in the developed world, so a much more hybrid configurations. Water is similar. I think these pictures are from Africa actually, where people have to satisfy their water needs in a number of ways. And this is for people a way to deal with malfunctioning or absent infrastructure, right? So they don't want to put, we say you don't put all the eggs in one basket because it's not safe, simply. Certain types of practices sort of develop around this situation. And one more picture by my colleague Penny Romain. Yeah, I think it's very telling in the sense of how cooking is done. Sometimes she took this photo in Tanzania. So that's one point of attention. Now, second point is that the way how we think in Europe is very much infrastructure related. And this infrastructure creates quite a severe lock-in. But in developing countries, sometimes this infrastructure is missing, but there is a lot of dependency because there is a lot of historical, political, poverty type of issues which very much influence how these regimes, how these systems are configured. Third is that in our theories, experiments, trying out is a way to stimulate change. Today we were talking about organizational innovations with Caroline. The type of entrepreneurship that is emerging in Africa, but the question is, will it drive a change, and under what conditions? And then the issue of capabilities, and something that Franz was also talking about this morning, that this perception of innovations coming from the West, originating from the companies, and then we need technology transfer to bring them to the developing world. Well, in our work, we observed a lot of transnational connectivity, so a lot of impact of globalization. When Caroline lives somewhere else for a number of years, and she's coming back, and she's starting up a company, and she's an insider who knows how this works in a local context. I think that's beautiful. So that sort of is a sign of this convergence theory not really working properly. And the last issue is the issue of sustainability. I mean, what is sustainable? We have a set of indicators developed by scientists based on a number of literature reviews and consultations and so on. But when you look at these outcomes, they really don't say anything about uncertainties, about ambiguities between people. And we all have different perspectives. And we have done a set of workshops in Asia where we opened up by asking people, okay, what is sustainable for you? What criteria would you use? And I think that's one of the, for me, best ways to sort of find out what really sustainable is. So my plea is that we should have a little bit more of participatory approaches to defining sustainability and what to do about that. So this is a couple of sort of starting points. In this session, I would like to discuss with you and the panelists, what does it mean to innovate for sustainability in Africa? Is system innovation, is this transition context a useful framing of what needs to be done here? What is sustainable? Sometimes we pay more attention to environmental issues, sometimes to the social issues, but there are way more factors that need to be taken into account, how these path dependencies play a role in deciding about how to change and where to change, what are the critical challenges, what does it mean for policy, and how useful are these framings to talk about this. So this is the plan. I have invited 5 panelists. I myself have not done research on Africa. I've done most of my work on Europe and Asia. But I invited Lucy Baker from Spruce. She's a senior researcher, and I think you're also affiliated with Cape Town University. Lucy has done most work on energy in South Africa. Elsie is a postdoctoral researcher, and she's an expert on mobile money. Here, yes, working with the ISSS in Rotterdam. ISSS is International Social Science Institute of Social Sciences. Then Jesse Pachnestorp from Riese in Sweden. I asked Jesse to talk about sustainability today because that's the type of work he has done. Then Peter is really a practitioner. He has his own company and he is doing transitions in Africa. So and we are curious to learn from Peter. And Frans Berghout, who who spoke today. Frans will also talk a little bit about his experiences with using of this framing to clarify transitions in non-OECD type of countries.